There's a short scene late in Adventure Time where Finn is alone in the tree fort, sitting on the floor, talking to nobody in particular about a dream he had. And the way he describes it, almost shrugging, almost laughing it off, is the closest the show ever comes to telling you the truth about him. He says it like a small thing. He says it like a normal thing. The scene moves on, the show moves on, and nobody around him ever quite asks the right follow-up question. That's the whole pattern with Finn, really. He is the most analyzed character on a show that ran for nearly a decade, and somehow the strangest things about him are always the things the show treats as ordinary. Tonight, we are going through all of it. Every theory people still argue about, every reading the writers half confirmed and half left open, every quiet bit of evidence the show buried under jokes and slime monsters and an unreasonably catchy intro. You are listening to Pine Hat, so get comfortable, turn the lights low, and if you haven't subscribed yet, it really does help us keep making these. We'll be here a while. The first theory worth sitting with, because everything else grows out of it, is the one about the hat. Finn's hat is the simplest, dumbest looking part of him. A white pull-on cap with 2 little bear ears on top. He never takes it off. For something like the first 4 seasons of the show, you almost never see what's underneath it. The hat is so consistent that an entire generation of viewers grew up assuming it was just a stylized haircut. It isn't. And the reading the fan base landed on, years before the show eventually showed Finn taking the hat off, is one of those theories that started as a joke and slowly turned into something the show seemed quietly comfortable with. It goes like this. The hat is made from a bear, specifically, a bear Finn killed when he was younger, or a bear that meant something to him personally, or, in the most uncomfortable version, a bear connected to Jake's mother. Jake's mother, in the show's loose backstory, is a dog called Margaret who took Finn in after he was abandoned as a baby. The version that really got people uncomfortable suggests the hat is some kind of trophy, that the bear who raised Finn alongside Jake's parents ended up as the cap on his head. The show never confirms that. It is, in fact, quite careful not to. But it leaves the question hanging because the hat is so persistently weird, so important to Finn's identity, and yet so completely unexplained that the silence itself starts to feel like a clue. In its richest version, the hat theory isn't really about the bear at all. It's about the fact that this small, cheerful boy is walking around with something on his head he refuses to examine, and the show is gentle enough to let him keep it on for years before it ever asks him about it. He grew up surrounded by death. He was found in the woods as an infant. He was raised by talking dogs in a world where almost no other humans exist. Whatever the hat originally was, it became the one thing that has been continuously his, the one shape his head has had since the day the show started. And the rare moments he takes it off in later seasons are always heavy. He takes it off when he is being vulnerable. He takes it off when he is sleeping next to somebody. He takes it off when he loses a part of himself and has to look at what's left. When he finally does take it off properly, when you see his hair blonde and unruly and longer than you expect, the moment plays as a kind of unveiling, like he's finally letting the audience see him, like the hat has been a wall the whole time. The reading hangs together because it lines up with the deepest thing about Finn as a person, which is that he is profoundly, constantly hiding from how alone he is. Which leads naturally to the next theory, the one underneath everything, the one the show eventually answers but never stops returning to. Finn is the last human. Or rather, Finn was supposed to be the last human. The reveal happens fairly early, in the 2nd season, in an episode where Finn finds a group of mutated, mostly mute creatures called the Hyoomans, living in a damp cavern underneath Ooo. They look like fish people. They smell, the show insists, terrible. And their leader, a tall, broad-shouldered woman called Susan Strong, eventually pulls off her hood to reveal that she is beneath the mutations. Basically a human. For Finn, that moment lands like a slap. Up until that point, he had assumed he was the only one. The show had treated his humanness as a quiet, ambient fact. The punchline of jokes, the reason princesses found him quaint, the reason he is the protagonist of a show called Adventure Time set in a world of candy people and slime kingdoms and ice wizards. Then, in one episode, it pulls the rug out and tells you, gently, that he was wrong. There are others. They are damaged. They have forgotten what they were, but they exist. The theories that grew out of that reveal multiplied for years. Where did the humans go? Were they all killed in the Mushroom War? The nuclear event in the show's backstory that turned the old world into Ooo? Were they hiding? Were they on another continent? By the 8th season, when the Islands miniseries finally answers the question, the answer it gives is somehow both more reassuring and more upsetting than fans expected. The humans survived, a large population of them. They live on a chain of islands far from Ooo, kept hidden and safe by a system built by Finn's mother, a woman called Minerva Campbell, who, before the war, was a doctor. The show makes its argument very quietly. Humanity didn't die. It went into hiding, and it kept hiding, even after the world stopped trying to kill it, because the people running the system were too afraid to let anyone leave. So Finn is the last human in Ooo, but not the last human alive, and the distinction matters more than it sounds like it does. Every theory about Finn's loneliness has to be adjusted around that fact. He is not the end of his species. He is the only one who left. This is the show's reading more than the fans. Finn's whole arc is about being the one human who chose to stay in a world that would never quite be his. The islands give him the chance to go home, to live among his own kind, in a place where his hat and his blood and his face would not be remarkable at all. After seeing it, he chooses to come back. Ooo is home. Jake is home. The candy people, the princesses, the ice wizard with the broken brain, the vampire girl with the centuries of grief, that's his family. The humans are a fact. They are not a future. The popular fan reading is that this is the saddest decision Finn makes in the whole show. Sadder than any romance, sadder than any death, and it is hard to argue with once you sit with it. He chose, and he stayed. The mother is the next thread, because the way the show introduces Minerva Campbell is one of the strangest, gentlest betrayals it ever pulls on its audience. For most of the run, Finn does not have a mother. He has Margaret and Joshua, Jake's parents, the dogs who found him in the forest and raised him as their own son. The show treats that as enough. Finn never seems to feel the absence of a human mother for any real length of time. He talks about her once or twice, vaguely, in early seasons, and then for years the question just sits quiet, unanswered, the kind of background sadness the show is full of. When the Islands miniseries finally arrives and Finn travels across the ocean with Jake and BMO and Susan's companion Frida to find the place humanity ran to, the show structures the whole journey around the slow build to the moment he meets her. And what he finds when he gets there is that his mother is alive. She has been alive the whole time. She is a doctor. She built much of the medical and social infrastructure of the islands. She is also, in a way that takes a moment to process, no longer really a person. She uploaded her consciousness into a network of holograms before her body died, and so what Finn meets is, technically, a digital echo of the woman who gave birth to him. She is responsive, she has memories, she loves him. She does not, in the way a living mother would, get to leave with him. The show is doing two things at once. It is giving Finn the answer he has wanted, which is that his mother loved him and didn't abandon him, and at the same time it is taking the answer away by making it impossible for him to bring her home. She belongs to the islands. The system she built holds her there. The theory that people have built around Minerva, the one that gets quietly painful when you sit with it, is that her presence on the islands is the reason the human population there is so afraid of leaving. Her hologram network teaches them, soothes them, raises them, comforts them, and the side effect of that comfort is that they stop wanting to go anywhere else. She was a mother who, in trying to keep her people alive, made them too safe to live. Then, when her son arrives, the one human who was not raised inside her safety net, she is the one who has to admit that his world might be better than the one she built. That is one of the most devastating quiet exchanges in the entire show. And it does not get talked about as much as the more obvious emotional beats because it is buried inside a miniseries that some viewers still have not finished. The notion that Minerva is, in a strange way, the inverse of Finn is one that holds up well. She is humanity at its most cautious. He is humanity at its most curious. They love each other. They cannot live together. The show lets that hurt for exactly as long as it needs to and then keeps moving, because the show is fundamentally about moving. The father is harder because the father is where Adventure Time stops being gentle. Finn's father is a man called Martin Mertens, and the way the show reveals him in the 6th season, in an arc that begins with Finn breaking into a prison at the center of the multiverse called the Citadel, is one of the cruelest emotional sequences the show ever wrote. Finn spends years not knowing who his father is. He has dreams about him. He has fragments of memory. He has, increasingly, a sense that the answer is important and that it is being kept from him. When he finally gets to the Citadel, having crossed dimensions, having sacrificed quite a lot, having walked into a place full of the worst criminals in the known universe, he finds his father in a containment cell. The man is, in a word, awful. Not monstrous in a fantasy sense, not a tyrant, just a small, weaselly, evasive, charming, untrustworthy con artist who is more interested in getting himself out of the cell than in meeting his son. He flatters Finn, he uses him, he runs. The scene where Finn loses his arm, his actual arm ripped off as he tries to hold on to his father and his father pulls away, is the kind of scene the show does not really walk back. It happens. It defines Finn for the rest of the series. The theory that grew out of it is one of the show's most discussed reads, because it forces the audience to reconcile two things at once. The mother is good and trapped. The father is free and bad. Finn is half of each. The show then spends multiple seasons letting Finn try to understand his father, because Martin doesn't simply vanish. He comes back. He gets involved with the wider plot. He even, briefly, in the Islands arc, accompanies Finn on parts of the search for Minerva. What the show suggests, not in any single line, but in the cumulative weight of the writing, is that Martin was, before the war and before the trauma, a different person. There are flashbacks to him as a younger man, working with Minerva on the islands, helping people, being soft with his infant son. Something broke in him. The show implies that during a journey from the islands to Ooo, he was wounded, possibly possessed, possibly stripped of part of his personality by an entity he encountered, and what came back was the husk. So one reading is that the cruel Martin Finn meets in the Citadel is not the Martin Minerva married. That reading is harder to make than it sounds, because the show is also careful not to let Martin off the hook. He chose, after losing whatever he lost, to keep being awful. He chose to run. He chose, in the final acts of the series, to abandon his son again. Finn's father is both a victim and a coward, and Finn's entire arc as a man, all the way through to the finale and beyond, is about deciding which of those things he is going to let define him. He does not become Martin. That is, in the end, the whole point. The Shoko theory is one of the oldest and most tender Finn readings the show ever explicitly engaged with, and it grows out of a single dream sequence in the 5th season that, if you blinked, you might have written off as a one-off oddity. Finn falls asleep wearing a magical amulet, and he dreams that he is a young thief in a desert village called Mars, working for an early version of Princess Bubblegum to steal a powerful artifact from a kind, blind, mute creature called the Bear God. He has a robotic arm. He has a different name. He is, in the dream, a girl. Her name is Shoko. By the end of the dream, Finn lives Shoko's entire short life, fails her mission, dies in a way that is sad but quiet, and is gently buried by Princess Bubblegum long before the events of the show. The episode of television is one some viewers, the first time they watched it, dismissed as a flashback or a hallucination. The fan theory that emerged was simple and stubborn. Finn is the reincarnation of Shoko. The vision was not a dream. It was a memory. And the more carefully the show plays with the idea of cycles, the more weight that theory accumulates. Princess Bubblegum, the Candy Kingdom's ruler, is functionally immortal, made of gum, centuries old. She remembers Shoko. She loved her. She kept Shoko's robotic arm in storage, and that arm reappears later in the show in a tomb, in a quiet scene, and Princess Bubblegum looks at it the way a person looks at a photograph of someone they have outlived. The Shoko reading turns Princess Bubblegum and Finn's relationship into something almost unbearable. He has a crush on her for years. She is careful with him. She never quite lets him close, and she also never quite lets him go. Part of her is mourning. Part of her is watching the same soul come back in a new body and trying not to make him a tool the way she made Shoko a tool. What the show seems to land on in later seasons is that the cycle is real, but it is also not a doom. Finn is not bound to repeat Shoko's mistakes. He is given the chance to be something kinder. He is given the chance to grow up, and he does, in his own halting way, take that chance. So the Shoko reading is one of the few major Finn theories that has, in a manner of speaking, been confirmed. The show does treat the reincarnation as real. It just refuses to treat it as a curse, which leads into what is, for a lot of viewers, the single largest Finn theory of all. The one that ties the past lives and the heroism and the violence and the choice-making all into one bundle. The Catalyst Comet. In the 6th season finale, a comet appears in the sky over Ooo, and it turns out to be a recurring event in the planet's mythology. Every several thousand years, the comet passes, and it is always carrying an entity inside it, and that entity offers the person it judges most worthy a chance to leave the world behind and ascend into a higher form of existence. The comet has come before. It came when the planet was being formed. It came when an early hero called Orgolorg tried to capture it and was punished for trying, banished to Earth, eventually becoming, of all things, a penguin called Gunter. And when the comet arrives in Finn's lifetime, the entity inside it speaks to him directly. It tells him that he has been here before. It tells him that he is the soul who keeps refusing, life after life, the chance to leave. The show is making its argument very calmly. Finn is not just a hero in this lifetime. He is the hero archetype itself, reincarnated through the planet's history. Shoko was one of him. Other figures in the show's deep backstory were others. The comet is the test, and the test is always the same. The hero is offered the chance to stop being a hero, to leave the planet, to become something larger. And Finn, in line with every version of himself before, says no. He stays. He chooses Ooo, he chooses Jake, he chooses the people on the ground. In a final cruel twist, his father Martin, watching from the sidelines, takes the offer Finn refuses, and ascends into the comet without so much as a goodbye. The theory people built around all of this, before the finale aired, and especially after, is that Finn is, in a real and metaphysical sense, the soul of his world. He is the part of the planet that always insists on staying with the smaller, more vulnerable people. He is what saves it, because he refuses to leave it. Reading that decision in the larger arc of the show, every small adventure, every silly side quest, every awkward romance becomes part of the same long pattern. He is choosing over and over to be present. He is choosing not to ascend. He is choosing the messy, slow, embodied work of being a person in the world. The Comet arc gives that choice a name. It does not, you will notice, give it a guarantee. The comet does not stop coming. The cycle does not stop turning. The Catalyst Comet is, in a sense, the actual recurring antagonist of the entire show, more central than any of the named villains, and that reading is one of the harder Finn theories to argue against once you have heard it. The Lich is the one nobody wants to think about. The Lich is the show's primary supernatural villain, an undead, world-ending entity introduced in the 2nd season who exists in the show's mythology as the active will to destroy life. He is what the Mushroom War became after it was over. He is the residue of a nuclear weapon that gained consciousness, or, depending on which lore beat you weigh more, the residue of a much older cosmic evil that the war happened to release. Across the show's run, the Lich has a number of strange and specific interactions with Finn that produced a whole subgenre of theories about who Finn actually is. The first time Finn meets him in person, the Lich attempts to possess him, gets inside his head, and is repelled by, of all things, Finn's basic decency. The Lich, in turn, calls Finn by a name that is not Finn's name, sometimes referring to him with a strange familiarity, as if the entity has met him before, in a form that predates this lifetime. The theory that grew out of those exchanges is that the Lich and Finn are linked in a way the show never fully spells out. One version holds that the cycle of catalyst heroes the comet recognizes is mirrored by a cycle of decay, and that the Lich is, in his own way, a recurring shape too. Finn is the hero who refuses to leave. The Lich is the entropy that refuses to die. They are aware of each other across lifetimes. Pulling this together with the Comet arc, Finn and the Lich are two ends of the same long argument about whether the world is worth keeping. And the show, In a series of late-season moments, lets the Lich win small symbolic victories that hurt more than the obvious ones. The Lich is, for a while, transformed into an infant called Sweet Pea, raised in the Candy Kingdom, given a chance to live a normal childhood. That move, that transformation, is the show's argument that even the worst evil might be rehabilitable. The reading that lingers, the one fans return to, is that nothing is fully cured. The Lich's essence is still there. Sweet Pea is, in some sense, a child whose past life was death itself. And Finn, the hero who keeps choosing to stay, lives in a world where the worst possible thing is constantly being rehabilitated rather than defeated. That is, in a strange way, the most Adventure Time idea the show ever produced. You do not destroy evil. You give it a name, take it home, raise it gently, and hope. After Finn loses his arm to his father in the Citadel, the show is faced with a structural problem. Its protagonist is a one-armed teenage boy. He cannot keep being who he is without a replacement, and the show, instead of taking the easy way out and giving him a clean prosthetic in the next episode, lets the missing arm linger. He has a stump. He learns to live with it. He stops noticing it, mostly, and then he notices it again at the worst possible times. When a new arm does eventually arrive, it does not arrive as a gift. It arrives in a way the show treats as miraculous and a little bit ominous. As a flower. The flower is a small bud at the end of his stump. It grows. It blossoms. It takes the shape of an arm made of grass and vine and leaf. Then, slowly, across seasons, it stops being entirely his. The grass arm is the result of an enchanted sword Finn used and was warned never to use, a demon blood sword wrapped around a cursed grass blade that bonded with the wound where his arm used to be. The show plays this almost like a fairy tale. He needed a hand. The world grew him one. The catch, which fans started picking apart almost immediately, is that the grass arm is alive. It has its own consciousness. It dreams. It strangles people without Finn telling it to. It twitches in his sleep. Even before the show confirmed it, the prevailing read was that the grass arm is going to become its own being, that it is borrowing his body, that it is, in some sense, gestating. The show, to its credit, does not duck the implication. In the 8th season, the grass arm leaves Finn's body. It pulls itself off him during a confrontation with a grass wizard's old curse, and the leftover essence of the grass blade reconstructs itself into a humanoid figure called Fern. Fern is, in every meaningful way, an alternative Finn. Same blonde hair, same hat, same sense of duty, same affection for Jake, same desire to do good in the world. He is, the show says quite explicitly, what Finn would be if he had grown out of a curse, instead of out of a childhood. The theories around Fern are some of the most painful in the whole show, because Fern is doomed almost from the moment he is named. He is made of plant, he decays, he gets confused about whether he is real. He oscillates between wanting to be Finn's brother and wanting to be Finn's killer. What the show seems to settle on is that Fern is what happens when you ask a piece of someone to be a whole person. He has Finn's memories. He has Finn's reflexes. He does not have Finn's actual life behind those memories. He is a hero without a history, and the absence eats him alive. The way the show handles Fern's death late in the run is one of its most quietly devastating beats. He is given a last act of grace. He chooses, in the end, to be planted, to grow into a tree, to stop trying to be a person and to be, instead, a piece of the landscape Finn lives in. The reading that Fern is the tree Finn ends up living under at the close of the series, the literal home he eventually builds his life around, is one that has divided fans. But the show leaves the door open. It does not name the tree. It does not need to. Finn never really loses the parts of himself he loses. They grow back somewhere, in some shape, and he learns to live among them. The swords are the next thread, and the swords matter because Finn is, more than almost any other character on the show, defined by what he carries. He goes through an absurd number of weapons across 10 seasons, and every single one of them, even the silly ones, ends up carrying thematic weight by the time it leaves him. There is the root sword, his first, a simple wooden blade for a simple boy. There is the demon blood sword, given to him in a deal that involves his mother's image as a kind of bait. a weapon born of pain and dishonesty. There is the Scarlet Sword, the Crystal Sword, the Finn Sword. The Finn Sword is the strangest of them. It is a sword made by a corrupted version of Finn from an alternate timeline, the so-called Farmworld, which we will get to, and it contains within it a small homunculus of Finn himself, a tiny grass version of him, trapped inside the metal. The Finn Sword is the weapon Finn uses for most of the show's middle seasons, and it is, in a way, the show enjoys quietly pointing at the weapon he is fighting with that contains his own soul as its battery. Every sword Finn carries is, in some sense, a relationship with himself. The Root Sword is the child. The Demon Blood Sword is the grief over his father. The Finn Sword is the alternate self he could have been. The Night Sword, the dark blade he later acquires through a deal with the Lich, is the violence he carries inside him. The Grass Sword is the curse that became his arm. What the show seems to confirm by its actions, not by any line, is that Finn outgrows swords. He keeps losing them. He keeps replacing them. By the end of the show, he is, more often than not, weaponless. He fights with his hands. He fights with words. He fights, at the actual finale, with a song. The swords were never the point. They were the language of a boy who didn't yet know how to be a person without one in his hand. The moment he learns to put them down, all of them, the moment the show insists he no longer needs a blade to mean what he means, is the moment he is finally allowed to grow up. That reading lives or dies on the assumption that the show was thinking about its weapons that carefully, and the evidence is overwhelming that it was. The swords are too consistent. The losses are too specific. The argument the show is making about masculinity, about heroism, about what it means to be a young man whose hands have been full of metal since he was 12, is one of the most under-discussed Finn theories among general viewers, and one of the most often discussed among the deep lore fans. Davey is one of the strangest small theories about Finn, because it lives in a single episode in the 5th season and then never gets followed up on, and yet it tells you something true about him that the rest of the show keeps quietly confirming. Davey is Finn's alter ego. The episode in question is one where Finn, exhausted by being constantly recognized in Ooo, constantly praised, constantly expected to be the hero, gets so tired of his own celebrity that he shaves his head, ditches his hat, gives himself a fake name, and tries to live as a normal, anonymous citizen of the Candy Kingdom. He spends a stretch of the episode passing as Davey, a quiet, unremarkable person, working a small, ordinary job, being nobody. The strange thing about the episode, the thing that gives it a long afterlife in fan theory, is how good Finn is at it. He doesn't break. He doesn't slip up. He becomes Davey almost too easily. The character he was for the rest of the show, the cheerful boy hero, starts to feel, in retrospect, like a costume he has been wearing for the camera. Davey is a real part of Finn. Under the heroism is a person who quite badly wants to be small and ordinary and not responsible for anyone, and Finn spends the rest of the show pushing that part of himself down. The reading lines up with later seasons in ways that are hard to ignore. Finn frequently disappears from the main cast. He goes off on long, solitary, often unexplained trips. He gets quiet. He gets withdrawn. He is repeatedly depicted as a person who needs solitude more than the show would otherwise let on, and Davey is the early hint that that need was always there. Davey is the version of Finn that survives once heroism is no longer required of him. Once Ooo stops needing saving every week, Finn becomes, more or less, Davey. He grows out his hair, he runs his own life, he spends time alone. The boy in the bear hat is the public face, the man who plants gardens. The man we glimpse in the final episodes and in the spin-off specials is the older Davey, the one who finally got to keep the quiet life he tried to build in 1/2-hour episode years before. The show, with its usual gentleness, lets that be the answer. Davey is not a separate person. Davey is what Finn looks like when nobody is asking him to be anything. Farmworld is the theory and the canon event that together produce the most disturbing alternate version of Finn the show ever depicts. And it is buried inside a 2-part 5th season premiere that, on first viewing, looks like a simple time travel adventure. The setup is this. The Lich, having been defeated in the 4th season finale and trapped in an alternate form, manipulates Finn into using a portal to travel back through time and undo the Mushroom War itself. Finn, thinking he is saving the world, takes a sentient sandwich, a piece of bread that has somehow gained consciousness across the centuries, and uses it as a kind of magical fuse to prevent the war from ever happening. It works. The bomb does not detonate. The world is saved. Then Finn wakes up in a version of reality where the war never happened, where the strange, beautiful, magical world of Ooo never came into being, where instead the old world just kept being the old world, slowly, mundanely. He is a farm boy. He is called, in this timeline, by the show itself, simply Finn the Human. And the world he lives in is called Farmworld. He has parents, he has a normal house, he has, instead of a magic dog brother, a normal mortgaged kind of life. The catch the show takes its time revealing is that in this saved world, there is no magic, there is no bubblegum, there is no Marceline as we know her. Finn lives a small, hard, ordinary life. And the Ice King, the show's ancient sad fool of a villain who, in the main timeline, is the corrupted remnant of a man called Simon, is in this timeline still a sad man with a crown, wandering, alone, half mad, because in this version Marceline never adopted him as a father figure and he was never gentled by the centuries. The Farmworld plot resolves in a confrontation that goes badly. The crown the Ice King wears, the crown that has been driving him mad, lands on Finn. Farmworld Finn becomes, in a single broken moment, the new Ice King. He is, the show implies, lost. He becomes a wandering, magical, half-conscious wreck. He is rescued only by the main timeline Finn punching through reality and unmaking the entire alternate world by smashing the sandwich. The theory that emerged is that Farmworld is real. It is not undone. It is happening somewhere. Even if our Finn went back to his timeline, there is, somewhere, a version of him in a frozen wasteland with a crown on his head, no memory of who he was, walking alone. The argument is hard to disprove because the show, in later episodes, treats alternate timelines as continuously existing. The multiverse is a real thing in Adventure Time. There is a Catalyst Comet for every reality. And Farmworld, the theory goes, is the version of Finn who got what he thought he wanted, who saved his species, who in the process lost himself completely. Farmworld is the show's warning. If Finn ever stopped accepting his world as it is, if he ever tried to go back and fix the wound at the root, what he would actually do is replace one trauma with another. He cannot undo what made him. The moment he tries, the moment he reaches back through time to give himself a softer history, he becomes the very thing he has spent his life saving people from. That is, to be fair, a fairly dark thing to put in a 5th season premiere of a children's cartoon, and it is one of the reasons Adventure Time keeps finding new audiences. The show is willing to think about what it would actually cost to be Finn, and it is willing to show you the consequences in full. The Vampire King theory is in some ways the opposite of Farmworld, because it exists in a much smaller corner of the show, but it produces a much weirder version of Finn. In a 5th season episode not long after the Farmworld 2-parter, an alternative version of an alternative, Finn meets Jake in another fragment of an alternate timeline, and at the end of that journey, the show briefly visits another shard where Finn is a vampire. He has fangs. He has pale skin. He has the same eyes. He has, the show implies, killed and turned, or been turned and accepted it, and he is calmly running a small operation of his own as the Vampire King of his sliver of reality. The episode is brief. The character barely speaks. The Vampire King Finn became one of the most discussed minor versions of the character in the entire show, because he raises the question Adventure Time keeps almost asking, which is what Finn would be if he stopped having a moral compass. Vampire King Finn is not, the show suggests, evil. He is calm. He is collected. He is, in his way, in control. He is what Finn might look like if he had chosen power over compassion. The way the show stages him, briefly, in a single scene, is to let him be glimpsed and then move on without comment. Before the show ever returned to vampires in its 7th season, Stakes miniseries, the read on the Vampire King was that he was hinting at a temptation. That somewhere in Finn was a willingness to be that calm and that powerful and that the show would eventually have to confront it directly. The Stakes miniseries does, in a way, confront it. Finn helps Marceline, his vampire friend, hunt down the ancient vampires whose essence she absorbed centuries earlier, and in the process, Finn comes face to face with the kinds of beings he could become if he ever crossed a particular line. Pulling Farmworld Finn and Vampire King Finn together, they are the two versions of the same loss. One is what happens if you reject magic completely, the other is what happens if you accept it completely. The Finn we know is the one who lives in the middle, who keeps choosing, every week, to remain a teenage boy with a sword and a dog brother, neither too settled nor too unhinged. The show is not interested in giving Finn a destiny. It is interested in showing you, repeatedly, what the alternatives look like, and letting you decide that the middle is harder than you thought. The romances are where the show does some of its most careful, most patient work, and the theories about Finn's love life have been argued about online for as long as the show has been on the air. The first crush is on Princess Bubblegum. She is, in the early seasons, the center of his world. He builds her things. He fights for her. He believes, in the way young teenage boys do, that she is going to look down at him one day and notice. She is also, the show establishes, early, hundreds of years old, and the show treats Finn's crush with a careful kind of compassion. Bubblegum is kind to him. She is also, very deliberately, not interested in him in that way. She lets him grow out of it without humiliating him, and the show, to its credit, never pretends that the crush was anything other than a stage. By the third season, Finn is starting to feel that. By the fourth season, he is more or less past it. The show then gives him, in the form of Flame Princess, his first real relationship. Flame Princess is a creature made of literal fire, the daughter of the Flame King, an entity who can burn through almost any obstacle, and who, before Finn finds her, has been imprisoned by her father in a lantern for being too unstable. Their relationship is, by any standard, the most explicitly romantic and the most painful Finn has in the entire show. They date, they are good for each other. They are also, the show argues, going to hurt each other. What ends the relationship is something the show does not let Finn off the hook for. He, in a moment of insecurity, manipulates her into a confrontation with the Ice King by writing her a fake letter. He does this because he wants to see what she will do. He does it because he wants to prove something to himself. And when she finds out, she ends the relationship. And the show treats the ending with the seriousness it deserves. He was the bad partner. She walks away because she has to. The reading that lingers around the Flame Princess arc is that this is the moment Finn realizes the kind of person he could be if he is not careful. He is 12, then 13 when this happens. He does something that is, in the language of older relationships, almost cruel. And the show is interested in letting him sit with what he did. He grieves the relationship for a long time. He spends entire later episodes still working through the shame of it. By the time he has another serious romance with Huntress Wraith, a tall, calm, complicated woman who is one of the most adult women he ever interacts with as an equal, he is a different person. The Huntress Wraith arc is shorter, sweeter, and less destructive, and it ends because they are at different stages of life rather than because anyone has done anything wrong. The shape of Finn's romantic history is the show treating him as a person who has to learn what love looks like by failing at it, with every relationship a lesson rather than an endpoint. He is not going to end the series with a partner. The show is clear about that. What he is going to end the series with is the ability to be in a room with the people he has loved without falling apart. This is a more honest depiction of teenage romance than almost any other animated show of the era, and it is one of the reasons Adventure Time keeps being rediscovered by adults who recognize, in retrospect, what the writers were actually doing. The mental state theory is the one that knits all the others together, and it is the one that gets harder to look at every time you rewatch the early episodes after seeing the late ones. From the very first season, Finn is depicted as a child carrying significant trauma that he has no language for, and the show, with extraordinary patience, lets him develop that language across 10 years. He has nightmares from the beginning. He has, throughout the run, episodes where he hallucinates, talks to himself, or otherwise dissociates. He has long stretches of withdrawal. He has, in the later seasons, what looks unmistakably like depressive episodes, where he stops eating, stops sleeping properly, stops talking to Jake, and disappears for stretches of in-show time. The show does not name any of this clinically. It does not need to. The writers are making the case that this is what a real teenage boy with Finn's history would actually look like. And the realism of the depiction is part of what makes the show so emotionally heavy for adult viewers. He was abandoned in a forest as an infant. He was raised by talking dogs. He is the only human in his community. He has been to war in everything but name from the time he was 12. He has killed. He has lost. He has had his arm torn off by his father. He has been told by a cosmic entity that he is the reincarnation of a soul that has been refusing to ascend for thousands of years. He has watched his closest friends suffer in ways he cannot fix. The show is writing all of his quirks, his sword obsession, his constant need to be useful, his crush patterns, his tendency to vanish, as the expressions of a mind that has had to manage too much and is finding ways to keep going. The reading lines up with the way the show handles the Ice King's parallel arc. The Ice King is, beneath the comedy, a man whose mind has been eaten by the crown he wears, and the show is very careful to treat his condition with compassion. Finn is, in his own much milder way, going through a version of the same thing. He is being eaten slowly by the weight of his world. The show is, in its quiet way, asking whether he will end up like Simon, or whether he will figure out how to put the weight down before it does that to him. That is the secret arc of the show. That is, more than any single villain or any single quest, what Adventure Time is actually about. The depression narrative read is one of the hardest to argue against. It does not flatten the show into a single message. It just gives you a frame for noticing how much the show actually is willing to ask of him. The way he eventually does start to heal, slowly, gradually, across the later seasons, is one of the most underrated long-term character arcs in animated television, and it is achieved without a single moment that calls itself a recovery scene. He just gets, by inches, a little better. The show is modeling very calmly what real healing actually looks like, which is years of small choices that nobody around you notices in real time. The psychic abilities are a smaller, weirder thread, but they are worth pulling because they show up in episodes that otherwise feel almost throwaway. Finn, in a handful of late episodes, displays what can only be called psychic sensitivity. He has accurate dreams. He has visions of past lives that turn out to correspond to historical figures. He can, in at least one episode, sense the emotional state of a place in a way the show treats as a kind of low-key magic. The fan reading is that Finn is, in some part of himself, a magic user who has never trained as one. The show establishes that magic in Adventure Time is fueled by emotion. Wizards in Ooo have to feel things very strongly to do what they do. And the cost of being a wizard is that you tend to become a strange, lonely, half-present person. Finn has, by any measure, more raw emotional energy than almost any character on the show. He cries easily, he is angered easily, he loves easily, he grieves heavily. His constant low-level psychic sensitivity is the leakage of the magic he has never learned to channel. He could, if he wanted, be a wizard. He chooses not to. This is one more way the show is consistently letting him refuse ascension. He turns down the Catalyst Comet. He turns down the chance to live on the islands among other humans. He turns down the chance to wield ultimate weapons. He turns down, by simply never investigating it, the chance to be a wizard. He keeps choosing, every time he has the option, the smaller, more grounded, more human life. This is what makes him a hero. Not the swords, not the muscles, not the heroic posture. The fact that he could repeatedly become something more, and he chooses repeatedly not to. The psychic sensitivity is the show's quiet reminder that the choice is real. It is not that he could not have left. It is that he keeps deciding not to. The Susan Strong subplot deserves its own theory entry, because Susan Strong is one of the most strangely important characters in the Finn mythology, even though she is not present for most of the show. Susan, when Finn first meets her, is the leader of a group of underground human mutants. By the time he sees her again, she has been taken back to the islands, where she remembers that her real name is Kara, that she was, in fact, a member of a program designed to create enhanced humans, and that her time underground was a side effect of an escape attempt. She is, the show eventually reveals, a kind of distant aunt or cousin figure to Finn within humanity. She is, more importantly, the only other character in this series who shares Finn's exact existential condition. She knew the islands. She left them. She survived. She came back. She had to choose which life to keep. The way she chooses is parallel to Finn's. She does not stay on the islands. She comes back to Ooo, eventually, in the spin-off specials, to be part of the world he has built. Susan is the proof that the choice is not unique to Finn. Other humans can leave the safe place and live among the strange. The islands are not the only option. The existence of Susan, the act of her returning, validates Finn's whole decision. He was not making a mistake. He was, in his quiet way, leading. The Sweet Pea question lingers around the edges of every Lich theory, but it deserves a separate look, because the way the show handles Sweet Pea is one of the strangest small choices it makes in its later seasons. After the Lich is reformed into a baby, that baby is raised in the Tree Trunks and Mr. Pig household in a peaceful corner of the Candy Kingdom, and given the name Sweet Pea. He grows up, he is loved, he goes to school. He has, in episodes scattered through the later seasons, his own little arcs about identity and fear and what it means to know that you used to be something terrible. The way Finn interacts with Sweet Pea is, the show seems to suggest, one of his most quietly important acts of care. He treats him like a normal child. He does not flinch when Sweet Pea is afraid of his own reflection. He, more than almost anyone else in Ooo, lets Sweet Pea just be a kid. Sweet Pea is the embodiment of Finn's deepest argument about the world. If the Lich, the literal active will to destroy life, can be turned into a child who is loved and gentle and afraid, then nothing is too far gone. Finn's whole approach to the world, his refusal to write people off, his patience with the Ice King, his patience with his father, his patience with the corrupted versions of himself, is summed up in the way he handles this one boy. Sweet Pea is the proof that Finn's philosophy works. The Lich's body is gone. The Lich's heart, in some sense, has been replaced. The show, in giving Sweet Pea long, quiet scenes with Finn, is making the case that grace is harder and slower and more powerful than violence. Sweet Pea is, in some sense, Finn's spiritual child. He is not Finn's son. He is not Finn's responsibility. He is the result of the world Finn has been quietly building, one small act of mercy at a time. The age question is one of the strangest meta theories around the show, because Finn ages in real time across the run in a way most cartoons would never allow. He starts the show at 12. He ends it at roughly 17. His voice changes, his body lengthens, his face elongates. The actor who voices him, Jeremy Shada, was a teenage boy when production started, and his voice cracked and dropped over the course of recording, and the show did not paper over that change. They wrote it in. They let Finn's voice become a deeper, more uncertain instrument. They let him become more awkward. They let him become more interior. The argument is that Adventure Time is a coming-of-age story whose authenticity comes from the fact that its lead actor was, in real life, coming of age. The voice changes are not a bug. They are the whole point. The show is a real-time document of growing up, and the fans who grew up alongside Finn experienced something that is almost impossible to manufacture deliberately. The late season episodes hit different than the early ones, not just because the writing matured, but because the boy reading the lines was no longer a boy. He had become the character at the exact rate the character was becoming a young man. This is one of the most quietly brilliant production decisions in animation history. The cost was high. The actor had to be willing to keep coming back. The producers had to be willing to let him sound different. And the show had to be willing to write a Finn whose voice, by the final episodes, no longer sounded like the boy from the first ones. They did all of that. The result is a Finn whose coming of age is one of the rare animated coming of age stories that feels lived in rather than acted. The crown theory is the darker meta question, and it lives in the implications of the Farmworld episode. The Ice King, as the show eventually reveals across the run, is a man called Simon Petrikov who, before the Mushroom War, found an ancient crown and put it on, and the crown, in giving him its power, ate his mind. The crown is the show's most explicit metaphor for the cost of holding ultimate magic. And it is also, by the time you have watched the whole series, the show's most explicit metaphor for cognitive decline, for dementia, for the slow loss of self that comes with carrying things you cannot put down. The Crown has, over the centuries, kept Simon alive at the cost of erasing him. He still surfaces, in flashes, as the Ice King. He still remembers, sometimes, the people he loved before. One of the most enduring background theories of the show is that the crown is going to end up on Finn one day. Farmworld already shows him one possible version of it. He puts on the crown, he becomes the new Ice King. He is lost. The show, in its own timeline, is careful never to let him put the crown on. He resists it. He even, in one late episode, has the option of taking on a different crown of his own, a more benign one, and the show makes a point of letting him decline. The crown represents the ultimate temptation of the Finn arc. He could, by accepting magic completely, by surrendering himself to it the way Simon did, become a being of enormous power and enormous loneliness. The show says no, repeatedly. The show is telling you, as plainly as a cartoon can, that the price of becoming the next Ice King is too high. Finn refuses. In refusing, he gives the show its most consistent, quiet thesis, which is that the small life, the embodied life, the life that you live with the people who love you, is worth more than any crown. There is a theory about Finn's name that lives in the show's deeper margins, and I want to handle it carefully because the linguistic and mythological readings here can run away with themselves. Finn, as a name, has obvious resonances in Irish and Norse myth. There is a hero called Finn, or Fionn, in the Irish cycle, who is associated with wisdom, with chosen heroism, with a deep connection to the natural world. The show, with its writer's literary tastes, has been read by fans as engaging with that mythological background deliberately. Finn's name is doing thematic work, positioning him as a chosen hero in the older sense, the kind of figure who does not seek glory and yet is, in some sense, marked for a role. This lines up with the Catalyst Comet arc, with the Shoko backstory, with the recurring suggestion that Finn is the latest in a long line of souls who keep choosing the same thing. The show does not, however, confirm any particular mythological reading in dialogue. It leaves the work to the audience. Whether the name is doing this much heavy lifting is one of those theories you can argue either way. What is clear is that the show takes names seriously. Finn's father is named Martin Mertens, a name that has its own old world ring. His mother is Minerva, the Roman goddess of wisdom and medicine. Jake is named with the simple, ordinary cheerfulness of a real dog. Princess Bubblegum is, in private, named Bonnibel. The Ice King's birth name, Simon Petrikov, has a softness and a specificity that belongs to a real person rather than a fantasy character. Every important name in Adventure Time is doing work, and Finn's name, whatever you make of it, is no exception. The reading I find compelling is that the show is using Finn's name to mark him as a hero of a deliberately older kind, the kind whose heroism is measured in restraint rather than in conquest, and the rest of his arc is the proof of the read. The theory about Joshua and Margaret deserves a long look, because they are, in a sense, Finn's actual parents, in any way that matters emotionally, and the show is more careful with them than it sometimes seems on first watch. Joshua is a private investigator. Margaret is a healer and the calm head of the household. They are talking dogs, in a setting where talking dogs are normal. They find Finn as an infant. They take him in. They raise him alongside their biological son, Jake. They die before the events of the show begin. The show, in flashbacks scattered across the run, fills in the picture of who they were as parents and what they meant to Finn. Joshua and Margaret are the moral foundation of Finn's character. Everything good in him, every instinct to protect, every reflex to be loyal, every refusal to abandon a friend, the show implies, came from them. They taught him. They modeled it. One of the small recurring beats in the show is Finn. In moments of crisis, hearing their voices in memory and adjusting his choices accordingly. They are present, in a strange way, throughout the entire show, despite being dead before it starts. And it is one of the most touching things about the writing. Finn carries them. He carries them in the same way he carries the hat, in the same way he carries the swords, in the same way he carries the grass arm. They are with him in his hands and in his choices. The show treats parenthood, both biological and chosen, as the work of installing a small voice in someone's head that they can return to for the rest of their life. Joshua and Margaret install something good in Finn. He never quite stops listening to it. This is the reason he resists every temptation the show throws at him. The comet, the crown, the dark sword, the easy revenge against his father, and the reading is consistent with everything we know. The journal is a small but important Finn detail that has its own little thread of theory. Finn keeps a journal across the show. He writes in it often in the later seasons. He writes in it in moments of distress. He writes in it when he is unsure of himself. He writes, the show implies, both his real thoughts and the fantasies and stories he uses to process the real thoughts. Some of what we see in the show, particularly the more surreal episodes, the dream sequences, the unexplained tangents, may be filtered through Finn's journaling consciousness. The case is hard to make airtight because the show does not commit to it. But the read that some of the wilder Finn-centric episodes are essentially his interior life made visible is one of those readings that, once you have heard it, you cannot unhear. He is, by the later seasons, a young man who writes. He writes to figure out what he thinks. He writes to keep a record of what he has done, perhaps because some part of him knows that the people around him will not always remember. Finn becomes, in a quiet way, the historian of his own life, and that is one of the more dignified, small theories the fandom has produced. It makes him a person who is taking responsibility for his own memory, which is one of the most adult things any character can do. The violence question is one of the harder ones to talk about, and it is one of the things that distinguishes Adventure Time from almost every other animated show of its era. Finn is a child soldier. The show calls him that, more or less, in several late episodes. And the question of what to do with that fact, with the fact that you have a 12-year-old swinging a sword at monsters and being praised for the body count, is something the show develops a conscience about across its run. In the early seasons, Finn kills things almost casually. He kills small monsters, he kills bad guys, he treats violence as a tool the way any standard hero does in a children's adventure show. By the middle seasons, the show starts to notice. It starts to ask, in episodes scattered through the run, whether the violence is helping. There is an episode where Finn is challenged by a sword master who tells him that real heroes know when not to fight, and Finn struggles with the lesson. There are episodes where his solutions to problems do not work, where his instinct to charge in makes things worse, where Princess Bubblegum or Marceline have to step in with a smarter approach. By the late seasons, Finn has, in his quiet way, become a non-violent hero. He fights, still, when he has to. He saves the world, still, when it needs saving. But more often, in the late episodes, he is the one trying to talk first, trying to find another way, trying to refuse the trap of the easy fight. The show is making a deliberate argument about heroism. The older a hero gets, the more cautious he should be with his power. Finn earns his heroism, in the show's terms, by giving up the parts of it that were easy. He gives up the sword. He gives up the instinct. He gives up the certainty that the fight is the answer. By the time the show ends, the question of whether Finn has killed anyone in the most recent stretch of episodes is not even something you have to ask. He has stopped. He has aged out of it. This is the show telling you what growing up actually requires, which is the willingness to be useless in the old way in order to be useful in a new one. Jake is, in some ways, the largest single Finn theory, because Jake is not just Finn's brother. Jake is, the show argues across 10 seasons, the thing that keeps Finn human. Without Jake, Finn would have been alone in Ooo. Without Jake, Finn would have been the only conscious being in the tree fort. Without Jake, Finn would have had no example of how to be a person who could care for someone other than himself. The show is, in its bones, a story about two brothers, and the theories about their bond have multiplied over the years. The reading I find most compelling is that Jake is, more than any other character, the love of Finn's life. Not in a romantic sense, but in the sense of the deepest, most foundational bond a person can have. Jake is the constant. Jake is the one Finn comes home to. Jake is the one Finn can be silly with, can be small with, can be himself with. Princess Bubblegum is the crush, Flame Princess is the lesson, Huntress Wraith is the closer. But Jake is the relationship that lasts. And the show, in the way it treats Jake's eventual death, treats the loss of the brother as the loss that defines the rest of Finn's life. In the Distant Land spin-off specials, in the one called Together Again, the show comes back to Finn and Jake some years after Jake has died. Finn is an adult, he has a life, he has, by all accounts, kept moving. But the moment he gets the chance, through a strange supernatural detour, to see Jake again, the way the show stages the reunion is one of the most emotionally raw things the show ever did. He has not gotten over it. He was never going to get over it. The show is being honest about what it means to lose a brother. You build a life around the absence. You do not stop loving. You do not stop missing. And when you get 5 more minutes with the person, you take them and they hurt as much as they heal. The entire show is, on some level, a long love letter to chosen family, with Jake as its main proof, and that is one of the most widely shared readings of the series among adult fans. It is the one I would defend hardest. The show is about a boy and his dog brother. The show is about how much that is. The show, in the end, lets that be enough. The Marceline connection is its own thread, and one of the smaller, more interesting Finn theories grows out of the way Marceline and Finn interact across the show. Marceline is a vampire, 1,000 years old, the daughter of a demon, the adopted daughter, in a sense, of the man who became the Ice King. She is, by any standard, one of the most emotionally complicated characters in the show. Finn is, for most of the run, her younger friend. Marceline functions as a kind of older sister figure for Finn, and the show is using her to give him a model of what surviving long-term loss can look like. She has lost everyone she ever loved more than once. She has, by the time Finn meets her, built defenses that are several centuries thick. The show lets her, slowly, let Finn in. The way she teases him, the way she trusts him, the way she lets him be present when she is having a hard time. Marceline is, in her own way, teaching Finn how to grieve while still being alive. She is the model. She is the proof that you can carry as much as she has and still be a person who plays in a band and laughs and falls in love. Finn's late season emotional maturity is, in part, a result of watching Marceline survive her own life, and that red is consistent with the way the show is paced. He gets quieter as she gets quieter. He gets braver as she gets braver. By the time the series ends, with Marceline and Princess Bubblegum together, and Finn standing nearby in the support role, he has, in a sense, helped them get there by being one of the few people who saw both of them clearly. Finn's quiet emotional contribution to Marceline and Bubblegum's relationship is one of his most adult moments, and the show invites you to notice it even if it never spells it out. He helped them. He stepped back. He let it not be about him. BMO is the small, magical little game console robot who lives with Finn and Jake. And the theory that has grown up around BMO, especially after the Distant Land special centered on BMO, is that BMO is, in some sense, the soul of the tree fort itself. BMO is not just a roommate. BMO is the witness. BMO is the one who sees Finn at his most private, at his most childish, at his most goofy, and who treats him the same regardless. BMO is the part of Finn's life that does not ask him to grow up. BMO is the eternal child energy of the house. BMO plays, BMO sings, BMO makes pretend in the kitchen. And Finn, even in his most exhausted late seasons, can come home and play with BMO and be 12 again for an hour. On a story level, BMO is the keeper of Finn's joy, and that is one of the gentlest readings the show invites. Every house needs a BMO, every adult life needs a small element that refuses to take itself seriously, and the show is making a quiet recommendation about how to keep a heart soft through hard years. The Distant Lands BMO special, set in deep space and apparently long before the events of the main show, complicates BMO's timeline in ways fans are still arguing about. There are theories that BMO is older than Ooo. There are theories that BMO is, in some metaphysical sense, a kind of mascot of stories themselves, a creature whose function is to wander through narratives and make them slightly more bearable. The show is intentionally vague about it. What holds up best across viewings is that BMO is the show's smallest, kindest argument about the importance of play. The Ice King relationship is one of the most quietly important Finn theories, because Finn's friendship with the Ice King, and ultimately with Simon Petrikov underneath the Ice King, is one of the most patient, long-form arcs in the show. The Ice King starts the show as a villain. He kidnaps princesses. He is, in early episodes, the kind of antagonist Finn punches first and asks questions about later. And then, slowly, the show starts to reveal that the Ice King is not actually a villain. He is a sick man. He is a man whose mind has been eaten by a magical artifact. He is, beneath the chaos, a former scholar called Simon who was once a kind and good and frightened man. He took in a small girl during the apocalypse. He raised her as best he could, with the crown slowly destroying his sanity. That girl was Marceline. The crown won in the end. He forgot. He became the Ice King. By the time Finn meets him, what is left of Simon is mostly buried. How Finn treats the Ice King across the show is one of the most quietly mature character notes in the writing. Finn could, on simple logic, treat him as a villain. He chooses not to. He chooses, especially in the later seasons, to treat him as a friend. He spends time with him. He plays with him. He, in one extraordinary episode, sits with him in a way that allows Simon to flicker through. Finn's patience with the Ice King is the show's clearest argument about how to treat someone with cognitive decline, with mental illness, with the kind of condition that makes them difficult and lonely and ridiculous all at once. He is gentle. He is forgiving. He does not insist that the Ice King be cured before he is loved. This is what real kindness looks like. And the show, by letting Finn model it, is suggesting that the response to people whose minds are sick is not punishment or distance, but presence. By the time the show resolves the Ice King arc, with Simon eventually freed from the crown in the last episodes, Finn is one of the people who stands closest. Not because he fixed Simon, because he stayed. The teeth theory is a smaller, weirder Finn detail that has its own life in the fandom, and it grows out of an episode where Finn's loose baby teeth, the ones that fall out as he grows up, are revealed to be alive in a strange magical way. They have, in one episode, become small creatures with their own little lives. The episode is mostly a comedy. The teeth do not have major plot significance beyond it, and yet the theory that grew up around the teeth is one of the more telling small Finn theories, because it lines up with the way the show seems to treat all of his discarded parts. The hat, the teeth, the arm, the blood. Every piece of Finn that leaves him seems to keep being something. The show is making a quiet point about the body, about how the things you shed remain, in some way, yours. The grass arm grows into Fern. The teeth grow into tiny creatures. The shed parts of Finn populate the world. Finn is, across the show, slowly distributing himself across Ooo. It is a read you cannot quite prove and you cannot quite disprove. It is a poetic one. The show seems to enjoy it. By the end of the series, Finn is, in some literal sense, woven into the landscape, that his teeth are out there in the world, that his hair has become a hat, that his arm has become a tree, that pieces of him have become small companion creatures. The hero, by losing pieces of himself across the run, has become the place itself. He is no longer separate from Ooo. He is part of it. The show, in its last episodes, in its quiet shots of the world after the crisis, seems to invite you to read it that way. The bag and Jake's body deserve their own brief look, because one of the running visual jokes of the show is that Jake, Finn's brother, is a magical dog who can stretch and shape his body, and one of his most common uses of that power is to carry things for Finn. Jake is, in episodes scattered across the run, Finn's backpack. He becomes a bag. He becomes a wallet. He becomes a vehicle. He becomes a weapon by stretching into improbable shapes. The reading is one of the most tender, small ones the show invites, because it suggests that Jake is, in his physical accommodation of Finn's adventures, performing a kind of constant, low-key act of love. He is the surface Finn lives on. He is the body Finn carries his things in. He is, in the most literal sense, the form Finn's life takes when there is no other way to hold it. The show is, in a deeply sweet way, suggesting that the people we love become the shapes our lives have. Finn's life would not have a backpack without Jake. Finn's life would not have a chair without Jake. Finn's life would not have a tent, or a boat, or, in more than a few episodes, a horse, without Jake stretching to fit the moment. This is the show's longest running visual metaphor for what brotherhood is in practical terms, and it is one I find myself returning to. The brother is the bag. The brother is the boat. The brother is the body that holds the things you need. When the brother is gone, as he eventually is, the things you need will have to be held a different way. The show is honest about that too. Late Finn carries his own things. He has to. The finale theory is the largest single Finn theory, because it is the theory about what the show is actually saying about him in the end. The series finale, called Come Along With Me, brings together every major thread the show has been weaving for a decade. It involves a war. It involves the Lich in his most dangerous form. It involves the Catalyst Comet question one more time. It involves Princess Bubblegum, Marceline, BMO, Jake, the Ice King, Simon, Finn's father, and the entire ensemble. The way it resolves is, on the surface, quiet. There is no climactic duel. There is no last great victory speech. There is, instead, a song. There is, instead, a moment where Finn and the others sing the Lich back to dormancy. There is, after the war, a montage of how everyone's life continues. And there is, in the very last shots of the finale, a small bird called the Orb, the same kind of bird that appeared in the opening sequence of the show, suggesting that the cycle of stories has not ended. New heroes will rise. New adventures will happen. Ooo will continue to be Ooo. The finale is making an argument about cycles, about how heroism is not a person but a position, about how the next Finn will rise out of the next generation regardless of what the current Finn does, and this is one of the readings that has held up best with rewatch. Being a hero is a job. The job, like all jobs, predates the worker. The worker, when their time is up, hands the job to the next one. The show is not, in the end, about Finn at all. It is about the position he occupies. He grew into it. He grew out of it. The next person will grow into it after him. Finn, by the end, is allowed to stop being the hero. He is allowed to be a person. The show's most generous gift to its protagonist is the right to retire. He does not have to keep saving the world. The world will save itself the next time through someone else. And he is allowed, finally, to have a small life in a quiet corner of Ooo with the people he has chosen and the home he has built. Distant Lands, the 4-part special spin-off series that came out a few years after the main show ended, gives the audience a longer look at what Finn's adult life ended up being. The special called Together Again, in particular, is the one most relevant to Finn. It is set after Jake has died of old age. Finn is an older man. He has lived a full life. He is, by the standards of the world, an elder hero. He is given the chance, through a complicated, supernatural premise involving the afterlife, to spend time with Jake again. The way the special handles the reunion is the closest the show ever comes to making a thesis statement about grief. Finn is given Jake back. Finn is also told, gently, that he cannot keep him. Jake is dead. Jake is in the afterlife, on his own journey. Finn can visit. Finn cannot bring him home. The way Finn handles this, by being grateful for the visit and willing to let his brother go again, is the closest the show gets to telling you what the adult version of Finn finally looks like. He has learned to lose without breaking. He has learned to love without holding. He has learned to be present without requiring permanence. The entire arc of Finn, the human, is, on a thematic level, the arc of a child learning to be a person who can let things go, and this is one of the most consistent readings of the show. The Catalyst Comet asked him to ascend. He said no. The islands asked him to come home to his species. He said no. The crown asked him to take its power. He said no. Every offer of permanence and certainty has been refused. What he has built instead is a life that contains, by the time of Together Again, an enormous amount of grief and an enormous amount of grace. He misses Jake. He keeps going. This is the answer the show has been working towards the whole time. The hero is the one who can be small in his loss. The hero is the one who can let the brother go. The hero is the one who lives in his quiet way, in honor of what he has lost. There is a real-world thread that runs underneath every theory we have been talking about, and it is worth handling carefully because it shapes the show in ways the show itself rarely acknowledges. Adventure Time was created by a man called Pendleton Ward, who developed the original short and ran the show through its early seasons. He is responsible for the show's tone, its weirdness, its willingness to be sincere underneath the absurdity, and a great deal of what makes Finn feel like Finn. He stepped down as showrunner during the 5th season for reasons that were widely reported as having to do with the pressures of running a show that large and the toll it was taking on him personally. He stayed on as a consultant and a writer. The day-to-day running of the show passed to Adam Mudo, a longtime member of the team, who guided it through its later seasons and through the Distant Lands specials. The argument that has emerged in the years since is that the show is, in a strange way, a collaboration between two sensibilities. The earlier seasons have the loose, freewheeling, slightly chaotic energy of Ward's original vision. The later seasons have the more considered, more emotionally weighted, more long arc structured energy of the team that finished it. Finn's late season maturity, his willingness to sit with grief, his growth out of the violent boy hero into a quieter young man, is partly a reflection of the showrunner change, and that is one of the more grounded production-based readings of the show. The argument is not that one sensibility is better than the other. The argument is that the show grew with its team. The writers who took it over had been working on it long enough to know what kind of character Finn could become, and they were given permission by Ward's departure and by the network's continued support to take him there. The show would have been good if Ward had stayed. The show would have been different. What we have, instead, is a show that started in one mode and grew, with its team, into a different one. And the result is one of the most evolved animated series in television history. Adventure Time is a model for how a show can change leadership without losing its soul, and that is one of the more useful readings the industry has taken from it. The respect the later team showed for the early sensibility, while expanding it, is a kind of professional kindness that does not always get talked about, but which the show would not be what it is without. The voice cast is part of the same story, because the people who voiced these characters, especially Jeremy Shada as Finn and John DiMaggio as Jake, are foundational to who the characters became. Shada was 11 or 12 when production began. He grew up at the recording booth. His voice changed in the booth. His sense of who Finn was as a person changed alongside his own life. DiMaggio brought a depth of warmth to Jake that, paired with Shada's earnest energy, created a brotherhood that audiences could feel as real. The show, in casting them and trusting them across a decade, did something that is rarer in animation than people realize. It let its actors live inside their characters long enough for the characters to absorb something of the actors back. The chemistry between Finn and Jake on screen is partly a product of the chemistry between Shada and DiMaggio in the booth. And this is one of those production facts that explains the show better than any thematic analysis could. They like each other. They have liked each other for years. The show captures something of that liking in every scene where Finn and Jake share screen space. The same is true of the broader cast. Hendon Walsh as Princess Bubblegum, Olivia Olson as Marceline, Tom Kenny as the Ice King, all of them have been with the show long enough to become part of who the characters are. Adventure Time is, among its other things, one of the best examples of how stable, long-form voice casting deepens a story. The voices age. The voices change. The voices carry the weight of the years. By the late seasons, when Finn's voice has dropped and Princess Bubblegum's has matured and the Ice King's has somehow gotten both sadder and sillier, the show has accumulated an authenticity that no amount of writing alone could produce. The Mushroom War is the backstory that hangs over every Finn theory, and it is worth a longer look because the show takes about a decade to fill in what actually happened. The Mushroom War is the nuclear event that ended human civilization and gave rise to the magical world of Ooo. It happens, according to the show's loose chronology, roughly 1,000 years before the events of the main series. Before the war, there was a normal, recognizable world. There were cars, there were laptops, there were ordinary humans. The war involved nuclear weapons. The aftermath involved the release of magic, the transformation of much of the surviving life on Earth into the strange creatures of Ooo, and the survival in much smaller numbers of humanity itself. The show, across its run, drops fragments of pre-war life, a toaster, a keyboard, a piece of art, a photograph. The cumulative effect, by the time you have watched the whole series, is that the magical fantasy world Finn lives in is actually post-apocalyptic. The candy people are mutations. The slime kingdom is mutations. The tree fort is built on the bones of a normal house, in some readings. Princess Bubblegum was, before becoming the candy person we know, a small mass of pink goo that emerged from the radiation. The Ice King was, before that, a human scholar living through the war and the immediate aftermath. Adventure Time is, in genre terms, a post-apocalyptic story disguised as a fantasy. And this is one of the most common backstory-based theories of the show, and one I find airtight. The show is making a quiet argument about resilience. Even the worst possible thing can be followed by a strange, beautiful world, given enough time, and the children growing up in that strange, beautiful world will not always know what was lost. Finn is, by definition, one of those children. He grew up not knowing what was buried under the soil. He grew up thinking the world was always this. The show, in slowly revealing what the world used to be, is doing a kind of slow excavation that mirrors the way real people learn about their own histories. He learns. He sits with what he learns. He keeps going. GOLB is the cosmic horror layer of the show, and the GOLB theory is one of the things people argue about hardest because the show does not commit to a single read of him. GOLB, introduced in the late seasons and central to the series finale, is a giant cosmic entity whose name is a kind of guttural sound, whose body is mountainous, whose eyes are unnerving, and whose function in the show's metaphysics is to be the embodiment of pure chaos. One of the more popular cosmic horror readings is that the Lich, the show's main villain, is a creation of GOLB, or a fragment of GOLB. Another holds that the Mushroom War itself was, in some sense, GOLB's doing. The show does not confirm any of these directly, but it does treat GOLB as the thing behind the things. He is the deeper layer. He is what evil really is, in the show's terms, which is not malice but chaos, not cruelty but disorder. Finn's whole stance, his patience with mess, his refusal to write people off, his quiet building of relationships across difference, is a kind of slow, steady answer to GOLB. He is the human face of order against chaos. Not order in the sense of rules, order in the sense of love that keeps showing up. Finn's life is, in cosmic terms, an argument against GOLB, and this is one of the larger philosophical theories the show invites. The universe contains a great deal of chaos, and the meaning we make is the meaning we build, deliberately, in the face of it. Finn builds. Finn keeps building. GOLB, in the end, is sung back to sleep, not slain. This is the show's most political and most spiritual argument at once, and I find it compelling. You do not defeat chaos. You sing to it until it lies back down. You make a melody bigger than its noise. You hold the line by being present, by being kind, by being persistent. Finn, in the finale, in singing his part of the melody that holds GOLB at bay, is doing what he has been doing his whole life. He is being there, he is staying, he is choosing the small, persistent work over the big, satisfying victory. Fiona and Cake is a strange parallel theory that lives at the edge of the show's canon, and that has become, in recent years, more than just a fan curiosity. Fiona and Cake are the gender-swapped versions of Finn and Jake, introduced in an episode in the 3rd season as a kind of stylistic exercise, supposedly written by the Ice King as a piece of fan fiction. The episode is, on the surface, a joke. The Ice King is lonely. He has been writing stories about a version of himself who is a benevolent prince, and about a girl version of Finn who would, presumably, fall in love with him. The fan fiction is the punchline. Then the show, with characteristic gentleness, keeps returning to the Fiona and Cake material. Multiple episodes feature them. The world they inhabit gets more textured. By the time the spin-off series, called Fiona and Cake, premiered in 2023, the show had quietly committed to the idea that those alternate versions of Finn and Jake exist somewhere, in some shape, in the multiverse. Fiona and Cake are not just gender-swapped versions. They are alternate selves of Finn and Jake in a parallel reality where things played out differently, and that is, by now, more or less canon. The spin-off series treats them as real people. They have their own lives, they have their own problems. They are, in their own world, dealing with what it means to be the alternate version of someone who has, in another dimension, lived a much more dramatic life. The multiverse Adventure Time has been building is taken seriously by the show in a way few children's cartoons commit to. Every alternate Finn is a real Finn somewhere. Farmworld Finn is real. Vampire King Finn is real. Fiona is, in her way, real. The larger theory that emerges is that the show is not just telling the story of one boy in Ooo. It is telling, by implication, the story of every possible version of the same soul navigating the same questions in different worlds. The Catalyst Comet's offer is being made somewhere to all of them, and each version is, in its own way, refusing. Finn the human is not a single person, but a kind of recurring shape that the universe keeps producing. And that is one of the larger metaphysical theories the show has earned, with the existence of Fiona and Cake the first hint of it. They were the first sign that the show would take its multiverse seriously. The Catalyst Comet was the second. By the time Distant Lands and Fiona and Cake expanded the world further, the audience had been quietly prepared for the idea that Finn, the human, as a soul, is something the universe keeps producing. The Pine Hat reading of this is that it is, in its way, a kind of hopeful theology. The universe keeps making heroes. The universe keeps offering them the chance to leave. They keep saying no, and the world keeps being saved. The pajamas are a small Finn detail that has its own quiet theory life, and it is one of the things the show is gentle about. Finn wears pajamas. Specifically, the famous outfit, the blue shirt and dark blue shorts and the white hat, is, according to the show, his pajamas. He sleeps in them, he adventures in them, he never changes. The pajamas are his entire wardrobe. That he has been wearing one outfit for the whole run is the kind of joke the show enjoys without quite confirming. He has other clothes in the tree fort. He puts them on in occasional episodes. The default Finn, the iconic image of him, is a boy in pajamas. This is the show's way of insisting on his childlikeness, and it is one of the small, consistent ideas that runs underneath the show. He is, no matter what he does, no matter how much he grows, no matter how many wars he fights, a boy in pajamas. This is part of the show's deeper compassion for him. He is not, even at his fiercest, an adult. He is a child playing at being a hero, in the clothes he sleeps in, until the show is ready to let him grow up. When the show does let him grow up, in the later seasons, in the bit parts of Distant Lands, the pajamas come off. He wears different clothes. He has a different silhouette. The wardrobe is part of the show's clock. Pajamas are childhood, other clothes are adulthood. The transition is gradual. The signal is subtle. The audience, in retrospect, can mark the show's emotional progress by what its protagonist happens to be wearing. The tree fort itself is its own object of theory. Finn and Jake live, for most of the show, in an enormous hollowed out tree, which they have furnished in a kind of chaotic boyhood style. There is a kitchen, there is a treasure room, there is a bedroom they share, there is BMO, there is, the show implies, the bones of an older structure underneath the tree, hints of a pre-Mushroom War building that the tree grew up around. The tree fort is, like everything in Ooo, layered over the old world, and that is one of the small, consistent reads. There are pre-war artifacts in it. There are remnants of a domestic life from before the bomb. By the late seasons, when Finn is starting to take more responsibility for the home, the way he treats the tree fort starts to function as a kind of metaphor for his interior life. He cleans, he fixes, he keeps the place alive. The tree fort is, in some sense, Finn's body. He has been growing in it. He has been changed by it. He has been, in his quiet way, building it the whole time. The show is, in the way it shows the tree fort across the run, making the case that home is not a place you find, but a place you make. The tree fort starts as a playhouse. It becomes a real home. The transition is, as everything in this show is, slow. The way Princess Bubblegum's view of Finn evolves across the show is its own large theory, and I want to give it its own careful look because Bubblegum is one of the most morally complicated characters on the show, and the way she relates to Finn is, in its own way, the most adult relationship he has. Bubblegum starts the show as the unattainable crush. She is older, she is in charge of the Candy Kingdom, she is, by the show's accounting, somewhere around 800 years old, give or take. Although her age is a moving target, she treats Finn in the early seasons as a useful young hero, a tool of sorts, someone she can dispatch on missions when something dangerous needs handling. This is not entirely flattering, and the show seems aware of that. Bubblegum is not, in the early seasons, treating Finn as a peer. She is treating him as a soldier. As the show progresses, she starts to revise that. She starts to notice that he is growing up. She starts to wrestle with whether her relationship with him has been entirely fair. By the late seasons, she has stopped treating him as a tool and started treating him as a friend. They have conversations as equals. She asks his advice. She, in moments of crisis, comes to him for reassurance. The way the show stages that shift is one of the most quietly satisfying long-term arcs in the writing. Bubblegum, the immortal ruler with the long memory, was, in some sense, being slow to update her view of him. She remembered him as a boy. She did not, until late, let herself see him as a young man. This is the show's compassionate take on what it means to be in a long-term relationship with someone who is growing up faster than you can adjust your perception. Bubblegum's growth as a character is, in part, the work Finn does on her by simply existing and growing, and that is one of the more underrated readings of the show. He changes her. He does not change her by demanding anything. He changes her by letting her watch him become a person. This is one of the most adult dynamics in any animated show of its era. The older person, the powerful one, has to be willing to see the younger person clearly. Bubblegum, by the end, does. She and Finn end the show in something close to genuine friendship, and the friendship is earned by both of them in a way that almost no other Cartoon Network show of the period attempted. The Cosmic Owl is one of the strangest small lore pieces the show plays with, and the theory around it intersects with Finn in ways that are easy to miss. The Cosmic Owl is a recurring background figure in the show's mythology, an immense winged creature whose presence in a dream supposedly indicates that the dream is true, that the future seen in it will, in some sense, come to pass. Finn dreams about the Cosmic Owl on multiple occasions across the run. He sometimes has prophetic flashes. He sometimes sees things that turn out to be accurate. The Cosmic Owl is, in a sense, a representative of the deeper magical structure of the show's universe. And that is one of the small pieces of lore that explains the more uncanny moments. The show takes dreams seriously as a kind of communication channel between the conscious and the cosmic. Finn's dreams are not always meaningful, but the ones the Cosmic Owl appears in are. This gives the show a kind of magical realism logic, where dreams are sometimes literal previews of the future, and it is one of the things that makes Adventure Time feel different from other fantasy cartoons. The show is unwilling to treat its supernatural elements as just decoration. The supernatural means something. The dreams matter. The omens land. Finn, in his sensitivity to all of this, in his willingness to take his dreams seriously, is depicted as a person who is paying attention to the universe in a way most characters around him are not. Finn's intuition is, in some part, a kind of magical literacy he has developed without naming, and that is one of the small, consistent reads. He is, in his quiet way, a mystic. He does not know he is. The show knows he is, and treats his dream life with a respect most cartoons would not bother with. The Stakes miniseries deserves its own attention because it is, alongside the Islands miniseries, the closest the show ever comes to a long-form sustained meditation on a particular question, and the question Stakes is asking is about loss and rebirth and what it means to want to be different than you have been. Stakes is about Marceline. Marceline, the show's vampire, wants, at the start of the miniseries, to stop being a vampire. She wants to be mortal. She wants to grow old. She has lived too long. She has been too many things. Princess Bubblegum, with her science, performs a procedure on Marceline that extracts the vampirism from her body and turns her, briefly, into a regular, living being. The procedure releases the ancient vampires Marceline absorbed centuries ago to gain her own powers, and Finn and Jake spend most of the miniseries helping Marceline track down and reabsorb the ancient vampires before they can do too much damage. By the end of the miniseries, Marceline is, in the show's terms, a vampire again. The procedure could not last. She had to take her vampirism back, or the ancient vampires would keep being a threat. The read of Stakes I find most resonant for the Finn theory question is that it is, in its way, an argument the show is making to Finn directly. You cannot opt out of who you are. You cannot, by an act of will, become someone else. The vampires come back. The history comes back. The body returns. The only thing you can choose is how you carry it. Marceline carries it, by the end, differently. She is no longer trying to be human. She is no longer ashamed of being vampire. She accepts. The parallel for Finn is clear. He cannot stop being the hero. He cannot stop being a human. He cannot stop carrying the things he has done. The only choice is the carrying. Stakes is, in this read, the show telling Finn through Marceline that the answer is not transformation, but integration. You become whole by being all the things you have been at once. The relationship between Marceline and Princess Bubblegum is a theory area on its own, and its relevance to Finn lies in the fact that Finn is, for most of the show, one of the few people who can see clearly what is happening between them. Marceline and Bubblegum have a history. The show, by the late seasons and especially by the finale in the spin-off specials, makes clear that they were involved romantically, that they broke up, that they have been working through the long aftermath of that breakup across the entire run, and that they end the show together. Finn is, on some level, the witness to this slow reunion. He watches them argue. He watches them protect each other. He watches them, in his own teenage incomprehension, do the things people in long-term complicated relationships do. Finn's later emotional sophistication, his ability to handle adult relationships, comes partly from having had a front row seat to two of the most adult women in his life slowly find their way back to each other. He learned from them. He learned that love can be patient. He learned that love can survive. He learned that the people you love do not always tell you everything, and that this is okay. Finn's quiet support for Marceline and Bubblegum's reunion is one of his most generous acts, and it is one of the things the show does not call attention to, but which the audience can feel by the finale. He is happy for them. He is not jealous. He has, by the end, fully grown out of the crush on Bubblegum and into a respect for who she is with Marceline. This is one of the most quietly mature things any animated character has been depicted doing, and the show does it without speeches. The Lemonhope arc and the various small side characters Finn helps across the show deserve a brief look, because Finn is, in his quietly persistent way, building a network of people who will outlast him, and that is one of the more grounded readings of his life. Lemonhope is a child of the Lemon Kingdom, a strange, small, lemon-shaped boy who, in a multi-episode arc, becomes a figure of hope for his oppressed people. Finn helps him. Finn does not, importantly, save him by force. Finn helps him by letting him become his own person. The way the Lemonhope arc resolves is one of the more interesting examples of the show's quiet ethics. Lemonhope, after years of growth, returns to his people, not because Finn told him to, but because he, on his own, decides that he is the one who can help. Finn was the bridge. Finn was not the answer. The pattern repeats across the show. Finn helps people without claiming them. Finn shows up when needed and leaves when not. Finn does the slow, patient work of nudging the world towards being a little better, and then he goes home. This is the show's most explicit ethical thesis, and Finn is its main carrier. He is not a savior. He is a neighbor. He is the one who shows up. He is the one who leaves room for other people to be the heroes of their own stories. And this is, for me, the show's most important argument, more important than any cosmic mythology. The cosmic mythology is the spectacle. The neighborliness is the message. The mortality question is the one that runs underneath everything, and that the show, especially in its later seasons and in Distant Lands, is brave enough to look at directly. Finn is mortal. Finn is going to die. Finn will not live the way Princess Bubblegum lives, or the way Marceline lives, or the way the Ice King lives. He has a human lifespan. He will, the show makes clear by the end, get old. He will lose his brother. He will, eventually, die. The way the show treats his mortality is one of the most quietly moving aspects of the whole run. It is the source of the bittersweetness. Finn matters to Bubblegum and Marceline in a way they cannot quite handle, because they have learned, over centuries, to hold mortal friends at a slight distance, and Finn is the friend who keeps stepping closer no matter how much they brace. Bubblegum's eventual willingness to fully love is, in part, the result of her watching Finn live fearlessly with his short life, and that is one of the more touching small readings the show invites. He teaches them. By being mortal and being unafraid of it, he teaches the immortal ones in his life that fear of loss is not a reason to refuse love. This is one of the show's most important messages about life itself. Time is short. Loss is certain. The answer is not distance. The answer is closeness anyway. Finn, in his short, bright life, is the proof. This is what Bubblegum and Marceline ended up understanding by the finale. and what allowed them to be together at last. And the reading is consistent with the way the show has built them. He helped. He may not have known he was helping. He helped anyway. Billy is the figure who, of any of the heroes Finn looks up to, casts the longest shadow over Finn's understanding of what being a hero is supposed to mean. Billy is, in the show's lore, the legendary great warrior who came before Finn, who fought monsters, who fought the Lich, who won wars, who saved Ooo more than once. Finn idolizes Billy from the early seasons. He has a model of Billy. He wants to be Billy. He is, in a sense, training himself to be Billy. The show, in one of its quietly devastating mid-run choices, shows Finn what Billy actually became in his old age. Billy retired. Billy stopped being a hero. Billy lived alone in a cave, eaten away by the cumulative grief of his career, eventually killed in a way that is, on screen, brutal and undignified. The lesson Billy taught Finn, in the end, is not the lesson Billy meant to teach. It is the lesson that being a hero forever is not actually possible, that the body cannot do it, that the mind cannot do it, that even the greatest hero eventually has to face the end of his usefulness and find another way to be alive. Billy's arc is the show telling Finn directly that he needs to grow out of being a warrior, and that is one of the strongest readings of the late seasons. Finn takes the lesson. He, by the end of the run, is no longer trying to be Billy. He is trying to be something else, something the show does not have a name for. A person who is no longer a hero by trade, but is still useful in the small, ordinary ways a person can be useful. Billy is the cautionary tale, and Finn is the one who actually learns from it. Finn lives the life Billy could not figure out how to live, and that is one of the most generous things the show does for its protagonist. He is allowed to grow past his hero. He is allowed to surpass Billy by, in some sense, refusing to keep being him. The doors are a small piece of lore that has its own little theory attached, and it grows out of the way the show treats portals and dimensional travel. There are, scattered across Ooo, a number of doorways and crystal entry points, and odd dimensional thresholds that allow characters to move between realities. Some of them are the work of Magic Man, the chaotic sad wizard from Mars who appears across the run. Some of them are the work of Princess Bubblegum's science. Some of them are simply there, ancient, unexplained. Finn, in his long career as the show's main protagonist, has been through more dimensional doors than almost any character in animation history. Finn is, in some sense, a dimensional traveler by default. He is one of the few characters who can walk through nearly any threshold without breaking. He has crossed dimensions, he has visited his alternates, he has fought versions of himself, he has been to the prison at the center of the multiverse, he has been to the islands beyond the sea, he has been to the dream world, he has been to the afterlife, in a sense, by the time of the Distant Land special. All of this is the show preparing the audience for a particular kind of read on Finn's nature, which is that he is, by experience, if not by birth, a person whose home is not a single place. He has been everywhere. He has come back. This gives him a kind of moral authority on what home actually is. He can go anywhere. He stays where he stays because he loves it. The choice, again, is the point. There is a small fan theory about the opening title sequence that is worth a brief look, because the opening of Adventure Time is one of the most consistent visual elements of the show, and the title sequence does small things across the years that reward attention. The opening shows Finn and Jake walking and adventuring across Ooo. It shows them through the Candy Kingdom, through dangerous lands, through small, surreal vignettes. The song that plays under it, the brief Adventure Time theme, is sung by the show's creator. The opening sequence is, in itself, a microcosm of the whole show, with each shot containing references to specific episodes or themes, and that is one of the long-running fan reading exercises. The opening was, in the early seasons, mostly playful, and the team allowed the same opening to mean different things by association as the show went on. By the late seasons, the same shots that once felt like throwaway visuals had accumulated in the viewer's memory, the weight of everything Finn had been through. The same sword swing meant something different. The same hat looked different. The opening sequence is, in its consistency, a measure of how much the show changed by changing what could not be changed. and that is one of the small, thoughtful observations the fandom has produced. The opening did not need updating. Finn changed, the show changed. The opening became, in its way, the still point. The theory of Finn as a writer and an artist deserves its own consideration because the show, especially in its later seasons and in the spin-off specials, gives Finn a creative life that is easy to miss on first viewing. He keeps a journal. He writes. He sometimes draws. He, in the Distant Lands special focused on his older self, has clearly been working on something through the years since Jake died. Finn, in his adulthood, becomes a kind of memoirist, a chronicler of his own life and the life of the friends he has known, and that is one of the more touching small reads. The show is, in the end, the work Finn wrote. What we have been watching, the 10 seasons of Adventure Time, are in some way the stories Finn would have written down. The reading is not airtight. The show does not commit to it. The gesture is there. He becomes a person who writes things. Finn, the human, in his quiet adult life, is the source of the very show we are watching, and that is one of those small, lovely meta-theories the fandom returns to. The show is a young man's memory of the years he was a boy. It is the way he made sense of what he lived through. It is, in a way, the gift he made of his own life to the people who came after. The hero cycle is the largest single theory the show invites you to think about, and it is the theory that closes most of the smaller threads. The hero cycle, as the show describes it, is a recurring shape in Oo's history. There has always been a hero, there has always been a villain, there has always been a guardian, a kingdom, a great threat, a sacrifice, a peace. Finn is one in a long line. Billy was one. Shoko was one. Going back to the earliest parts of the show's mythology, there have been others. The hero cycle is, in the show's terms, real, and Finn is simply the latest expression of it. And I have been circling that reading for a while. What makes Finn special is not that he is uniquely chosen, but that he is uniquely good at being one of many. And that is one of the more interesting late season takes. He knows he is not the first. He has been told he is not the only. The way he carries that knowledge, by not letting it depress him, by not letting it inflate him, by simply keeping doing the work, is part of what the show seems to admire about him. Being a hero is a job. The job, like all jobs, predates the worker. The worker, when their time is up, hands the job to the next one. Finn is one of the best the cycle has ever produced, partly because he never tries to be the last. He knows there will be others. He, by the end, makes way for them. The finale is, in this sense, a passing of the torch even though no specific next hero is named, and that is one of the broadest readings of the show. The cycle continues. Finn has done his part. The world goes on. There is a small sweet pea theory that I want to come back to, because it is one of the few small Finn theories that the show explicitly seemed to confirm. Sweet Pea, the reformed baby Lich, calls Finn his brother in a late episode. It is a quiet moment. Sweet Pea is afraid. He has been told something disturbing about who he used to be. He goes to Finn for reassurance. The way Finn handles him, the way Finn lets him be afraid, the way Finn talks him through it, is one of the most quietly fatherly scenes in the show, even though Finn is still technically a teenager when it happens. Finn has, by his middle teens, become a kind of older brother to a generation of small, strange beings in Ooo, and that is one of the things the show keeps quietly suggesting. There is Sweet Pea, there is Lemon Hope, there is, in the Distant Land special centered on the older Finn, evidence of other young people he has helped grow up. Finn's adult life, in the years between the main series and the Distant Land special, was, in part, a life of mentorship. He helped others. He passed on what Joshua and Margaret gave him. He taught the next ones how to be careful with the world and with themselves. This is one of the more underrated things the show has Finn do. This slow, patient mentorship of the next wave of small, strange beings. And it is one of the readings that, for me, holds the whole show together. The hero cycle is one thing. The brotherly arc is another. Finn does both. He saves the world in his time. He raises the next batch of saviors by being good to them in their childhoods. This is the show's quiet model of how culture survives across generations. You do not just save the world once. You raise people who can save it after you. Finn, in his quiet way, raises a generation. The theory of the Lich's voice coming through Finn lives in a couple of moments scattered through the run, where Finn, under stress, says or does something that does not sound like him, and the show, in shot composition and music, and the brief glassy look in his eyes, lets you wonder whether something else is speaking through him. The argument is that the Lich, having attempted possession in the second season and having been repelled by Finn's basic goodness, did not entirely leave. The reading holds that a small residue of the Lich remained inside Finn, dormant, occasionally surfacing in moments of his greatest rage or his deepest fear. The show does not confirm this directly. The show also does not deny it. Finn's most violent moments, his most cruel choices, the manipulation of Flame Princess, the rougher handling of certain enemies, are not entirely his own, the read goes, and some fans use it to soften their judgment of him. I am not sure. I find it persuasive. The other reading, the harder one, is that the violent and cruel moments are his. They belong to him. He is responsible for them. The show, in not letting him off the hook for them, is making the case that being a person means owning even the parts of yourself you do not like. The show is more interested in moral accountability than in convenient demonic excuses. Finn was bad to Flame Princess because he chose to be. Finn was rough with the Ice King in the early seasons because he chose to be. The Lich did not make him do it. He did it. And the way he sits with what he did, the way he keeps remembering it, the way he keeps trying to do better, is the model of moral growth the show is offering. The notion that the Lich made him do it is, in this read, the comforting one we should resist. The harder reading, the one the show seems to invite, is that he was just a boy and the boy made mistakes and the boy lived through them. The bathing scene is a small thing the show does in scattered episodes, and it has its own little fan theory life. There are episodes where Finn is in the bath, having a moment of quiet, often singing to himself, and the show treats these moments with a tenderness that almost seems out of proportion to their plot significance. The bathing scenes show him without his hat, they show him without his armor, they show him, often, in the most vulnerable state the show ever depicts a male protagonist in. These scenes are the show's way of repeatedly insisting on Finn's smallness, his ordinariness, his right to be just a boy in a tub singing a silly song, and that is one of the smaller, more compassionate readings of the show. The show is fighting. With every quiet bathing montage, the audience's instinct to see Finn as a warrior. It is saying, with gentle stubbornness, that he is not just a warrior, that he is a child, that he is going to keep being a child for as long as the show insists, and that he deserves quiet moments where nobody is looking. This is the show's most consistent argument about masculinity and softness, and I find it compelling. The boy in the bathtub is the real Finn. The boy with the sword is the surface. The show, in returning so often to the bathtub, is suggesting that the surface is not what matters most. The Princess Bubblegum Gum theory deserves a brief mention because of how it intersects with the show's broader thesis about being made of strange materials. Bubblegum is, the show eventually establishes in detail, made of bubblegum that became sentient sometime after the Mushroom War. She has a strange, biological, almost mythological origin involving a small mass of pink material that grew, on its own, into the woman she became. The way the show treats this origin, with a mix of reverence and humor, is one of the things that makes the show's world building feel as deep as it does. Everyone in Ooo is, in some sense, made of something strange. Bubblegum is gum. The candy people are candy. The Ice King is, in a sense, the crown. Marceline is, in part, demon. And Finn is, in this read, the only one who is made of plain old human material. And that plainness is its own kind of strangeness in Ooo. He is, by comparison to everyone around him, ordinary at the molecular level. This is part of what makes him relatable, both to the audience and to the show's other characters. Bubblegum, the strange being made of strange material, finds Finn fascinating partly because he is, by Ooo standards, the strange one. He is not enchanted, he is not mutated, he is not magic, he is just a person. This is what gives him his particular kind of authority on the show, and it is consistent with the way the writing positions him. The ordinary one, in a world of the strange, ends up being the moral compass, partly because he is the closest thing to the original baseline that anyone in the world remembers. The Earth itself, as a character, is the largest and quietest theory the show invites. The planet Ooo is, as we have discussed, a magical post-apocalyptic version of Earth. The show, in its later seasons, gradually reveals that the planet has its own kind of awareness, its own kind of memory, its own kind of cycle. The Catalyst Comet keeps coming. The hero keeps being born. The villain keeps regenerating. The seasons keep turning. The Earth in Adventure Time is, in some sense, a slowly thinking organism that produces fins the way an apple tree produces apples. And that is one of the largest cosmological reads the show invites. Ooo wants Finn. Ooo needs Finn. Ooo, in the wake of the war and the catastrophe and the long broken centuries, produces in each generation a young hero who will keep choosing to stay. This is the show's most spiritual claim. The world is not indifferent. The world is reaching, in its slow, strange way, towards goodness. And the hero is the shape that reaching takes. Finn is what the planet hopes for. The show is, in this sense, a kind of secular theology. It does not have a god in the traditional sense. It has, instead, a world that knows what it wants, and that produces, in each lifetime, the children who will give it what it needs. This is a hopeful story. The world is on Finn's side. The world is reaching for him. And he, in his quiet way, is reaching back. Magic Man is one of the small recurring chaos figures in the show, and the theory of how he relates to Finn is one of those side reads that, once you have noticed it, deepens the show considerably. Magic Man is, on the surface, a chaotic trickster wizard from Mars who appears in scattered episodes to torment Finn and Jake with strange pranks and pointless cruelties. He has a backstory the show gradually reveals. He was once a kind and intelligent being. He lost his wife. The grief broke him. He chose, in some way, to become the chaotic figure he became, partly to avoid feeling the loss directly. His chaotic interventions in Finn's life, the strange traps, the random transformations, the unkind jokes are, the show implies, the externalized version of his unmanaged grief. Magic Man is a cautionary tale running in parallel to Billy, and that is one of the more interesting reads of the show. Billy is what happens when a hero stops being a hero too late. Magic Man is what happens when a kind person turns their grief outward instead of working through it. Finn is, in the show's terms, between them. He is not yet Billy. He is not yet Magic Man. He is being shown, in episode after episode, what the alternatives to a quiet adult life look like. Magic Man is, in his way, the more dangerous warning, because Magic Man's chaos is, in its origins, sympathetic. He hurts. The hurting made him this. The show is asking Finn whether he is going to choose, when his time comes, to handle his own grief better than that. The answer the show keeps providing is yes, but barely. He is not naturally good at sitting with grief. He learns, slowly, to do it. He learns by watching Magic Man do it badly. He learns by watching Marceline do it well. He learns by watching the Ice King fail to do it at all. The show stages all of these examples around him, lets him absorb them without any single character ever sitting him down and lecturing him, and that is one of the most respectful things the show does for its protagonists. He is allowed to learn by watching. He is not told what to learn. He just learns in real time, and the audience learns with him. The Adventure Time cult, if you want to call it that, is the cultural phenomenon that has built up around the show in the years since its end, and the way Finn functions within that cultural phenomenon is its own little theory area. Adventure Time, when it started, was treated by the network as a children's cartoon. It was airing alongside other broadly comedic, broadly action-oriented cartoons of its time, and it was assumed to be aimed primarily at young viewers. What happened, instead, is that the show built an enormous adult audience. 20-somethings watched it, 30-somethings watched it. The show became, over its decade of broadcast, a kind of generational touchstone. The show people from a particular age range had grown up with and could not quite let go of. Why that is? The question of what about Finn made him resonate so powerfully with people who had aged out of the demographic the show was supposed to be made for is one of the more interesting cultural questions the show invites. Finn was, more than any other animated protagonist of the period, depicted as a child going through experiences that mapped onto the lived experience of his viewers. The childhood that had, on the surface, been bright and silly was beneath the surface, also full of weird, unmanageable feelings, of grief about things you could not name,